Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are midway through the 2036 season, and the Royals are having an exceptional year so far. 678 winning percentage, a huge lead over the Twins in the AL Central. 13 and a half games here as we start the month of July. Selling out almost every game. We had found a couple years ago when we bounced our ticket price up to $40 that attendance really kind of dropped. It seemed like that was some kind of key number. But given that at this point we've won back-to-back World Series championships, fan interest is at 100, loyalty is good, and we're selling out every game, we're just going to make that tiny move to push the ticket prices up to $40 and see what happens. Team is doing really well this year, obviously, based on our record. Have had a lot of injuries. Right now, Bryce Hubbart should be back shortly. Mike McNeil will be back in a few days. Arrieta Laziosi and Bobby Witt Jr. should be back in about a week. And then Willie Flores won't be back until August, unfortunately. But we've pieced together the season with the exception of some time with Caleb Lagerwell on the injured list. Our top four starters, Borgman, Lagerwell, Chivera, and Hillman, have been healthy. And the youngster Marco Estrada in the number 5 hole in our starting rotation is 11-2 with a 3.86 ERA. So we have good starting pitching so far. We've signed Hillman as well as our starting shortstop Tony Fonseca to extensions thus far during the season. And we still have some money to potentially spend. You can see we've got about $13 million. So we don't have any huge holes on the team. Obviously, it's a very good team that's playing well, but still going to look to see if we can add a little talent through the trade market over this next month before we get to the trade deadline for the season. And looking at the trade block, there's no overwhelming talent available, but Jesus Bibbs is a familiar name. He was a pretty effective reliever for us last year. 3.02 ERA and 100 strikeouts over 83 and a third innings. He signed with the Dodgers this offseason where he's been a full-time starter for them. We wanted to use him out of the pen, but he did start some games for us when we had a follower behind him. So really he was only going an inning or two in those, and then they were turning it over to the bullpen. But if we could get Bibbs for cheap, I would certainly bring him back. I think he's a good, solid left-handed arm, and given that we've had some bullpen injuries this year, wouldn't be the worst thing to bring him back to hopefully help our bullpen as we try to go for a three-peat this season. And we're going to see how desperate the Dodgers are to get rid of him. We're going to see if they'll keep all of his salary and just trade him away for a minor league pitcher who does have a good personality but is unhappy with his role on Omaha, the veteran Matthew Mueller. Clearly, to make this work now, we need to add in a pretty good player, although they would take Hugo Sandoval, who is a very marginal prospect. But I'm going to just go ahead and make the offer to kind of try to really take advantage of the Dodgers. I'm sure they won't go for this. They'll come back and probably ask for a big player, but it's only July 1st, so we've got plenty of time to potentially try to pick up Bibbs or somebody else in the trade market. Yeah, the Dodgers have come back to us, and clearly if they're going to retain his entire salary, they want a pretty good player or a pretty good prospect in return from us. So we're going to just kind of let that sit and stew for a while. Maybe we will make a move towards Bibbs towards the end of this month of July, but kind of want to know a little more about what our team looks like, what the injury situation looks like before we pull the trigger on anything. And the shortstop who we made an international free agent offer to at the end of the last episode has refused our offer. If you do remember, the crop of international amateur free agents was pretty mediocre, at least according to our scout, Travis Lee, who's a a pretty darn good scout, particularly with amateurs, and he doesn't really see a ton of upside in any of these players. Manny Quintero, the third baseman, like the fact that he's got some speed, but he's not great defensively, even though he's got a good arm. Does potentially have really good contact, good gap power, and not going to strike out. And given that he's got some speed, he could definitely be a guy who hits for a high average with a fair number of doubles and triples. So he could be a useful player. I think we'll make an offer to him, but we're definitely not going to chase at the international free agents this year just because they're not that good. Typically, we want to throw $5 million at somebody just to bring a prospect into the system. But if we can't get Quintero, I think we probably just move on and save that $5 million. But we'll see what happens. And we have re-upped Bobby Crosby as our manager. He took over 2 or 3 years ago, 2.5 seasons ago at this point. He's won World Series in each of his past 2 years after Byron Nichols retired, and we promoted him from bench coach, still making the $425,000 that he was making at a bench coach, but you can see we've now signed him to a 5-year extension at $1.5 million a year. So Crosby will be back with the team to manage us next season. And we did actually get Manny Quintero signed, so interesting prospect. Again, really like the contact, like the gap power, like the avoiding strikeouts. He's got enough speed to potentially make some use of that gap power. He could play third base. He can also play a corner outfield spot, left or right. So a little bit of versatility, a different kind of prospect than we normally would sign. But he's not even 17 years old yet. It's probably 5-6 years away till he'd potentially be a player at the major league level for us. So we'll see how he develops over the coming years. And Mike McNeil is ready to come off of the IL. That means that we're likely to send Jorge Lebron back to AAA. Again, we still kind of have this crazy numbers game going on with our corner outfielders. Given that LeBron is not completely developed, still kind of working on his eye a little bit, would rather that he be playing every day down in Omaha. So we're going to demote him, which he won't be thrilled about. Bring McNeil back up. Taking a look at the lineups. You can see that McNeil is in the lineup, is our DH against left-handed pitchers, but not in the lineup against right-handed pitchers. So he's going to get less regular action. I'm starting to think that McNeil may be the guy that we move on from this offseason to make permanent room on the roster for LeBron. McNeil was our #1 pick back in 2032, but his offensive profile is just not as strong as some of these other brilliant corner outfielders we have. So I think the hope is that he has a solid second half of the year for us, and maybe we look to move him and open up a full-time position for Jorge Lebron next year. And given the injury situation, we know that perennial all-star Bobby Witt Jr. is not going to be an all-star this season, but should have a boatload of them with the great record that the Royals have put forth. Let's take a look. Kind of a bit surprising, only one all-star among our pitchers, Jesus Mercado, who we picked up in a trade with Seattle at the end of last season when we started moving on from some of our corner outfielders. 2-1 record with 1 save, but a 2.35 ERA over 46 innings with 53 strikeouts. So the 25-year-old has proven to be a pretty valuable member of our bullpen, as we had hoped when we picked him up. Angelo Bolden, our catcher, missed some time on the IL earlier there this year, but still named an all-star for the 3rd time in his career, hitting .257 with 5 homers and 27 ribbies. Nice, solid defensive catcher. So good to see Bolden get recognized. No shock that Jonathan Ojeda named an All-Star for the first time. As a rookie last year, he led the American League with 51 homers, also drove in 125, was inexplicably left off the All-Star team, and also didn't even win the Rookie of the Year award. But he's jumped his batting average by about 30 points this year to 266. And still hitting with some pretty good power. So he's already put up a 3.1 WAR through 89 games played, which is what he did through the entire season last year. So the improvement in his batting average is helping. Javi Medina, the Rule 5 acquisition from a year ago, developing into just an excellent hitter, hitting 302, 22 homers, 71 runs batted in. And he, like Ojeda, is a first-time All-Star this season. Alex Vasquez, also an All-Star. You can see he is a perennial All-Star at this point, hitting 274, 19 homers, 56 runs driven in. One of the top bats in our lineup for many years. And that's it for the AL All-Stars from Kansas City. So 4 position players with Vasquez, Medina, Ojeda, and Bolden, and only 1 pitcher this year with Jesus Mercado. So 5 All-Stars for your Kansas City Royals, who, as we head into the All-Star game, holding on to a 13-game lead in the AL Central, and we are up by about 4.5 games, it looks like, on the Chicago Cubs for the best record in baseball, and we're up by 7.5 games on the Yankees for the best record in the American League. So as we get ready for the Midsummer Classic, the Royals are still very well positioned in this 2036 season. And the Dodgers apparently really want to get Jesus Bibbs off their books. They just made an offer to us, offering us Bibbs for 20-year-old minor league right fielder Juan Ortiz. Certainly doesn't look like he's a big-time major league prospect, but could be a decent 4th or 5th outfielder. He was our 10th round pick back in 2034. We're going to hold tight, but I could definitely see us looking to add Bibbs into our bullpen before we get to the trade deadline. Bobby Witt Jr. and Arrieta Laziosi now both back, since Witt Jr. has been out since May 17th. So he's been out for close to 2 months, missed 7 to 8 weeks with that sprained ankle. We're going to send him for just a couple days for a rehab assignment before we bring him back. Laziosi, I don't believe has been out quite as long, but let me check. Yeah, he's only been out since the 25th, so he's only been out a few weeks. Like Witt, he's fragile, or like Witt Jr., he's fragile, but he's also a lot younger, so we are going to bring him back up, which means that we will send Daniel Smith back down. 25-year-old first baseman, has been pretty good, 2 for 3, hitting .667, but just not playing very much at all at the major league level. So we will demote Smith back to AAA, put Laziosi onto the roster. Bryce Hubbart, who's on the rehab assignment, has started a couple games, seems to be pitching well, so need to be looking for a potential spot on the major league team for Hubbart also. So a lot going on. Hubbart probably want to bring back onto the major league roster, at least for the time being, but his spot as a left-hander could definitely be in jeopardy if we do decide to make a trade for Jesus Bibbs down the line. And we're ready for the first-year player draft for the second straight year. The Royals with the 32nd and final pick in the draft after winning the World Series while having the best record in baseball. So that is the only negative from the excellent seasons we've been putting together. But we've been a perennial playoff team for over a decade at this point, and We've found some decent players in the draft. I'm certainly not expecting someone like Jonathan Ojeda to fall to us again and basically go instantly from the college to a few games in the minors to hitting over 50 homers in the majors the next season. But it seems like there's some pretty good talent in this year's draft, so I'm guessing that someone pretty interesting will fall to us in the first round, and I think that even in the second round there's probably going to be some pretty interesting players to pick from. It looked like it was a pretty deep draft when I've kind of done my scouting for it this year. And with our first pick at the end of the first round, scouting director recommends we go with Derek Cobb, 6'5" high school catcher from George M. Steinbrenner High School. If we were the Yankees, we'd have to pick him. Certainly looks like he could have a very good bat for a catcher. The issue is that he's not a particularly good defensive catcher, which I don't love. He's 6'5", so we could play him at first base. If you had to, you could play him at third base, but you certainly wouldn't feel great about it. So I like the bat, but I'm hoping we can find someone more interesting than Cobb, who Travis Lee is recommending. You can see just looking at it in the most simple way, there's 6 4-star pitchers out there, including some high schoolers. We'll start looking at them. Greg Binion, starting pitcher. Don't love the lack of work ethic, but he is a guy who potentially has 5 pitches, good stamina. He's durable. He could be a solid major league starter if he completely develops. He's definitely somebody to think about. Again, the thing I don't love about him is his low work ethic, and he's also got a ridiculous demand of $10.5 million, which is way above slot for us here at the end of the first round, and probably why he's still around. Deshaun Hallman is another high school pitcher, really not a great personality, also looking for a lot of money. If he develops that changeup, he certainly could be a solid starter, but if he doesn't develop that changeup, he's a expensive bullpen pitcher. So I think these guys could both end up being solid major league pitchers, but not in love with either of them. Mel Morales is a 22-year-old relief pitcher. Probably not the type of guy we want in the first round. Ethan Polk, younger, almost 19 years old, but he's also going to be a reliever. Probably not what we want to go at in the first round. If he's hanging around in the third round with that good personality, we'd certainly think about bringing him on board, but probably won't be. Jorge Sanchez, left-hander, 18 years old, does have good work ethic, even though his overall personality is a little bit mixed. Another guy who's looking for massive amounts of money, though. $10 million is what he's looking for, similar to those first 2 starting pitchers. Certainly profiles as someone who could be an effective major league starter, but he's going to make us pay to bring him on board. And then the last of the 4-star pitching prospects is Juan Vargas, 21-year-old out of Puerto Rico, going to the University of Texas. Like the personality, like the fact that he's durable. His bonus demand of $6 million is high, but he does certainly look like someone who's going to have a really good sinker and a really good slider. I mean, both of those are already at solid major league levels. Got a decent splitter already. If that changeup develops, he's got a nice 4-pitch arsenal, and could see him having good stuff, really good movement, and respectable control. So although he's older than some of the other prospects, I kind of like him the best of these pitching prospects, simply because he's one of the closest to being able to help us in the majors. The money he's looking for, although it is above slot, is less than what Sanchez, Hallman, and Binion are looking for, and he's just there's not a lot of bust potential with him. I don't know that his ceiling is as high as some of those high school pitchers, but he certainly looks like someone who is going to be a solid contributor at the major league level, you know, a 4th or 5th starter in a worst case scenario. And if everything develops and he develops the 4 pitches, could certainly be a number 2 starter on a good staff. So he's an interesting prospect for us to think about, but we haven't even talked about the batters yet, and you can see that Derek Cobb, who our scout recommended, is viewed as a 5-star potential player, which you just don't see with the 32nd pick in the draft. As I talked about, I like his bat. He just doesn't really have a position to play. In theory, I think I'd like to bring someone a little more versatile on board. Taking a quick look at the other 4-star potential position players, center fielder Jeremy Danley. Interesting prospect. Certainly profiles as potentially having an above-average bat. Not a great defensive center fielder, but you could play him in center. Certainly would be comfortable playing him in left, and you could play him in right if you had to. He's tall enough at 6'4" that he could play first base. I guess if you had to, you could play him at third. Not the worst prospect in the world. Definitely someone to think about. Another center fielder, Tony DeJesus, college player. Like the fact that he's durable, very good defensively, and also profiles as potentially decent hitter. Not going to have a ton of home run power, but can hold his own at the major league level, and certainly could potentially make good contact, have good gap power, enough speed to take advantage of that. So don't hate him as a prospect either. And then the last of the 4-star batters is another catcher, Jaden Spruill. Like the personality with the high work ethic. I like the fact that he's above average catcher ability. Not a great bat, but a potentially respectable bat. He is an interesting prospect. I'm not in love with any of these players that are available, but I like a lot of them. And given that we're a team in win now mode, normally I like to kind of go with the younger high school players to develop over time. But I'm definitely intrigued by Tony DeJesus, who's almost 22 years old. He could be theoretically up in the majors towards the end of next season if he really develops as you'd hope he would. Love the glove. Clearly, outfield is not a huge need for us with the fact that we've got tons of incredible bats out there right now and a great glove in center with Angelo Velasquez. But I like him as a prospect, but I'm not going to lie. I'm also intrigued by Juan Vargas as a prospect too. I think he could be a really nice pitcher. There is a part of me, given that Vargas is waiting for or hoping for $6 million, thinking that I could wait on him and potentially pick him up in the second round if he continues to fall because he's looking for so much money. And a college-aged pitcher is, maybe not someone that people are going to reach on as far as the dollars like a high schooler. I don't know that. I'm just kind of making that up in my mind. But I like Vargas, but I also like some of these batters. They all have their positive traits to them. Tony DeJesus is just such a economical prospect with a bonus demand that's well below slot. If I want to roll the dice, what I do is I take Tony DeJesus here in the first round, and then I hope that Juan Vargas falls to us in the second round. I just don't think that he will, though. I really like his arm, and he's durable, great stamina. He's been facing great competition at UT. He's a left-hander. He's a guy that over the next few seasons, when guys like Borgman and potentially Caleb Lagerwell are going to be moving on from our team or getting less effective. You know, he's a guy who could be in our rotation, you know, do a September call up with him potentially at the end of next year, and then 2038 he could conceivably be in our rotation. This is a tough one for me because I want them both. And there is absolutely no way that De Jesus only asking for $900,000 is going to fall to us in the second round. There is some remote chance that Vargas asking for $6 million will fall to us in the second round. I'm not going to lie, Vargas is the guy that I really want. And I'm not sure if he'll fall to us. But between Binion, Holman, Sanchez, and Vargas, and then even Tony Espinoza here, Jorge Melian, Ahmed Rawls, haven't looked at those guys, but there's a bunch of starting pitching prospects that are looking for crazy amounts of money in terms of their bonus. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to sign any of them if we pick them up in the second round. But the thing that we do have going for us is that we've budgeted a bit above our slot amount, so we've got close to $2 million extra to play with there. And ownership should be somewhat flexible with us. You know, we've got $13 million out there for free agents. Sometimes they let you have some flexibility, although he is a controlling fiscal personality. Sometimes they don't give us the flexibility to kind of pay more for people. But I am going to roll the dice and try to turn this draft into an incredible draft. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to wait on the pitchers, and I hope that Vargas falls to us in the second round. And I'm going to go in the first round with the prospect that's closest to being able to help us at the major league level. In a couple years, when some of the younger corner outfielders that we've had up, like Victor Avelar, are into their arbitration years and starting to make more significant money, we'll potentially have De Jesus coming up to join us. He also is great insurance in center field for Angelo Velasquez. And he's just so cheap. He's looking for $900,000, which is a couple $1 million below slot. So I am going to maybe overthink this draft. We'll see how the second round develops. But we are going to take Tony De Jesus now. And again, I'm not going to lie. I'm hoping that the pitcher from Texas falls to us in the second round. If he doesn't, I'm going to be a little disappointed because he's the prospect that I like the best. But I think that taking De Jesus now and then hoping that Vargas falls to us in the second round is the only possible way to get both of those guys. I don't think there's any way that De Jesus would be around in the second round with the low amount of money that he's looking for. So let's go ahead, auto draft till our next pick, and we'll take a look at the pitchers. And they're gone. So even the guys who are making bigger money, all of those minor league pitchers looking for crazy money are gone. So we tried to get cute. Maybe we'll pay for it. You know, Ethan Polk, talked about him. Don't really necessarily want to reach for a reliever in the second round. If he's around in the third round, would certainly consider him. The only other 3+ star pitching prospect out there is Jin Ho Kim. doesn't have great leadership. I like the durability. I like the fact that he's going to have an arsenal potentially of 5 pitches. He's actually not a horrible prospect for the second round. I'm not going to claim that I like him as much as I like Vargas. And Vargas was obviously much closer to the majors. But 3 of his pitches are already close to major league quality. You know, if the slider and the changeup develop, he's got a 5-pitch arsenal. Now, none of the pitches are incredible, but they're all potentially plus pitches at the major league level, which means that his stuff should be acceptable, movement really good, and he's got potential for good control. He's also looking for a bit more money, but because we went cheap in the first round, he's an option. So I'm kind of interested in Jin-Ho Kim, looking at the OSA. They like him even more, and they really think his changeup has a lot of potential. You know, who knows whether that will develop or not. But I'm going to take a look back at the batting prospects, but to me, Kim is not a bad consolation prize as a pitcher here in the second round, given that the top-end prospects have already passed us by. And looking at the everyday players, the most interesting prospect to me is the second baseman, Jose Rojo, 18-year-old coming out of New York. Profiles, if he completely develops, is an above-average offensive player. Not great defensively. He's listed as a second base. You know, you could play him at second if you had to. He's 6'2". You can play him at first. You could play him at third if you had to, but he doesn't have a great arm. I mean, honestly, you can play him at short, but you can see that his ability to play that position is only a 35, so definitely not a perfect fit. You really don't want to play him in the outfield. I like the bat potentially. His bonus demand isn't out of control. I'd love it if he fell to the third round. I don't think he will. I'd also, at this point, like if Ethan Polk, the relief pitcher, fell to the third round. I don't think that would be a bad spot to take, you know, someone who looks like he could be a pretty solid relief pitcher. But right now we're going to go with Jin-Ho Kim and bring him on board as a potential pitching prospect for us in the future. So Jin-Ho Kim is the answer here in the second round, and we'll see if Polk or Rojo will fall to us 32 picks later. Odds are neither of them will, but Rojo actually is still around in the third round. And Polk is too, which gives us an interesting decision. Polk just looking for the low money. He's fallen because he's a reliever. You know, with that good work ethic, you know, could have a plus fastball and a plus cutter. He could be a nice arm out of the bullpen. To me, it seems with a bat that we like Rojo still on the board, a high school player though, I gotta kind of default to the guy who could be an everyday player for us. Again, I don't love him defensively. I think in a perfect world, he's a super utility guy. You know, if we had to play him, he's a second baseman or a third baseman, because he's a second baseman who doesn't have the range that you want, but he's a third baseman who doesn't have the arm that you want. He doesn't really have the turn double play rating that you'd want for a second baseman either. But the bat, you know, he could be a real good contact hitter with decent power. Doesn't have tons of speed, so the gap power is a little less valuable in terms of turning singles into doubles and triples. But for a third round pick, he's an interesting prospect. So we're going to draft Rojo in the third and then hope that the reliever falls to the fourth round. And he is still out there. So I'm going to take a look through some of these other prospects and just make sure that I'm not missing something. But with Polk having fallen to the fourth round, it might be the time to pull the trigger on him. And his demand is also very low, which is nice. I am kind of intrigued, though, by another infielder who really can't play the infield in third baseman Bill Arzola. You can see he's also a potential first baseman. He does have the ability to play a corner outfield spot if you needed him to. He's a guy with a lot of home run power and a good eye, so he could hit a lot of dingers and walk a lot. And he's got enough contact that he's not going to become a Joey Gallo kind of player, and he's also decent at avoiding strikeouts. So for the fourth round, he's not a horrible bat. He's also only looking for slot, so being drafted here in the fourth round, not going to have to pay a ton for him. I'm going to actually go ahead with Arzola. I know I've been talking about the relief pitcher for a while, but can always find a relief pitcher. And he is gone now in the fifth round. So starting pitching prospect Terrence Wright is out there, though. He's a player with good stamina, looking for $900,000, which is starting to get expensive for a fifth-round pitcher, but certainly looks like someone who could have a decent arsenal of 3+ pitches with a fastball, slider, and splitter if they all develop. So potentially good stuff, decent control. The issue with him is going to be movement. He could certainly turn into another Dan Keogh if that movement doesn't develop. But in the fifth round, you're not going to find many better prospects than that. So we'll go ahead and draft Terrence Wright in the fifth round, and I won't bore you with all the details over the final 15 rounds of this draft. And although we brought Bobby Witt Jr. after a few games in his minor league rehab assignment back to the major leagues, Willie Flores set back in his recovery from his fractured finger, having surgery tomorrow, so he's out another 3 months. Still a chance that we'll have him back for the playoff run, but definitely a loss to not have Flores around. He's a very important starting second baseman for us. Now we do have Laziosi, who has started for us at second base for the past few years and is having a resurgent season this year, so that helps. But Laziosi and Bobby Witt Jr. are both fragile in their health, and also love having Flores around because he's an excellent defensive center fielder. So when Angelo Velasquez has been banged up in the past, we've actually moved Flores from his starting second base role into starting center fielder role. So certainly not optimal that we're going to be without him for the next 3 months. But, cautiously optimistic that if we get into the playoffs, could have him back by the time we're in ALCS if things go well. So not optimal that he's still banged up, but hopefully the surgery will go well. And hopefully we'll still be playing when he's finally healthy this year. So not surprisingly, our first-round pick, Tony DeJesus, signed. We offered him the $900,000 he was looking for. Our second-round pick, Jin-Ho Kim, did not sign. He was looking for $5.5 million, as you may remember. We only initially offered him $3.5 million, so now we are going to go ahead and meet his demand to hopefully get him signed to the team. And then once we've done that, we're going to start dealing with some of these other players who are looking for more money than slot in all of those cases, particularly with the third baseman, Bill Arzola. But we want to make sure we get our top 2 picks signed, and then if we run out of money to sign some of these other prospects that we got later rounds, not a perfect scenario, but want to make sure that we get the top prospects signed first before we run out of money potentially. And perhaps not unexpectedly, Jorge Lebron continues to tear up the International League. Hit .444 last week with 3 homers, 9 ribbies, named Player of the Week. His morale is actually normal at this point, which isn't bad. Got his batting average up to .294 with 12 home runs. As we've talked about, he will almost certainly be on the Major League team next season. And he will almost certainly be called up in September. But right now, we prefer to get him regular at-bats in AAA, even though it does look like, other than his eye and discipline, he's pretty much fully developed, at least according to our scout. According to the OSA scouts, he's still got a little bit of upside in his contact and avoiding strikeouts, but he is well poised to take playing time from Mike McNeil, but Mike McNeil is only playing against left-handers right now, so would rather have LeBron continue to play every day down in Omaha for us, at least over the next 5 or 6 weeks till we get to September call-ups. And here in late July, on the 21st, you can see that the small increase in ticket prices has done nothing to the enthusiasm of Kansas City fans to turn out and watch our team. Although fan interest has dipped to 99, the first time that I can remember in the last few years where it hasn't been 100 plus. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe that's a sign that we need to make a transaction and bring on someone who's got some popularity on the trading block. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is available. Still a nice power bat. We don't really need a first baseman. We don't really need a DH, but that would certainly excite the fans and excite the team to bring on a player like that. Our former left fielder, Jasmine Diaz, this point in his career looks like a fairly average offensive profile, and definitely don't need a corner outfielder. So no one all that exciting out there. You can see that we have put Mike McNeil on the trade block. No one's really sniffing around him. He's hitting .261 with 5 homers and 176 at-bats, so hasn't put up the same kind of power that he did last year with us. But he's only 25 years old. I think he's still a interesting player, although we may be moving on from him this offseason. Looking at the pitchers, definitely some interesting names out there. I saw Kumar Rocker, although he's not what he used to be. We'll have to figure out if we want to make an offer for any of these pitchers. It looks like Jesus Bibbs is no longer available, so the Dodgers did deal him away before we had the opportunity to bring him on. But if there's a pitcher who can help us and the price is not excessive, we've got no problem trying to bring somebody on board. And I'm not going to lie, I don't love any of the pitchers that are available at this point. As we've already talked about, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a bat that could certainly help us. Only hitting .257 this year, but still a 153 OPS plus and 147 WRC plus, given that he's got 28 homers in 369 at-bats. If he was dirt cheap, I think we could find a spot for him, even though, it's a DH / pinch hit spot, and he's probably taken some at-bats from some other pretty good players. But certainly if you can add a player like that for a playoff run, you think about it. But I don't feel like we have to reach for anything. We're 68-34. We've got a .666 winning percentage. We're up by 14 still on the Twins in the AL Central. Looks like we are up 7.5 on the Yankees for the best record in the American League. Up 6 on the Cubs for the best record in baseball. Obviously, there's no question that we can have some injuries down the stretch. Going to have to make a decision on Hubbard in 10 days. But I think at this point, we're just going to kind of wait and see how things go over these last 10 days. And then if we make a trade, it's going to be right at the end of the month, right at the trade deadline. And we have gotten our second-round pick, Jin-Ho Kim, the high school prospect, only 17 years old. Got him signed, and you can see he went 7 innings pitched with 9 strikeouts and only 3 hits allowed in his first game in rookie ball. So I don't think he is someone who's going to be imminently pushing to make the major league roster, given that he's only 17. But do like his arsenal of pitches and think he was a interesting prospect to have in the second round. Willie Cananya, who was a first-round pick of ours a few years ago, now out for the full season with a torn labrum. He split this year between single A and high A ball. Nice glove. The question is whether his bat is going to develop enough to be a useful major leaguer, but definitely a bummer that his season has been cut short. Just won a couple of games in a row, shutouts against Seattle, but did get one piece of bad news, and I know that some of you have been expecting this for a long time, but Ben Borgman finally banged up. Sore elbow, day-to-day injury, but it's going to have a moderate impact on his throwing for 1 to 2 weeks. Given that he's already wrecked physically, we are not going to mess around. We're going to put him right on the IL. He's been 6-3 this year, although his 4.70 ERA over 113 innings pitched is not great. Has put up a 1.8 WAR and a 3.49 SIERA. So maybe he's been a little better than his numbers look, but we still potentially want him to have a big role for us in the postseason, so we are not going to fool around with him given the large lead we've got. Place him right on the 15-day IL. That will allow us to bring Bryce Hubbart up from Omaha. Looking at the rotation now, Hubbart's actually going to go right into the rotation as a follower. So we got a couple lefties in the back end of the rotation now. Certainly the loss of Borgman, even though it's not hopefully for the long term, does increase the chance that maybe we do look at bringing on a pitcher over these next few days before we get to the trade deadline. And Jorge Lebron continues to make it tough to keep him in AAA. Another Player of the Week award, hit .583 last week with a homer, 3 ribbies, and 5 runs scored. As I've talked about, he's definitely the first guy that we're going to add when we get to September call-ups. The question is whether we can hold off that long for him. Mike McNeil is hitting .271 and does have 8 homers now, so he's coming along a little bit in the little playing time that he has. I think at this point I still want to get McNeil more seasoning at the major league level when he's not going to be playing quite as frequently. Let LeBron continue to play every day in AAA, and then this coming off season, I would tend to think that we're probably going to be moving on from a Mike McNeil or maybe even a Victor Avelar to open up some room in our outfield/DH spot for the young power hitting Jorge Lebron. And I'm just not that excited about any of the pitchers that are available on the trade block. We could certainly look to find someone who's not on the block, but as I've talked about, the team is great and we're loaded, and I don't think we need to push. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is hurt now, concussion with a substantial impact, although supposedly only 1-day recovery from the concussion. That sounds like some 1970s or 1980s rub some dirt on it, and it'll be better approach to health and wellness than the 2036 approach to health and wellness. But if Guerrero Jr. is available for nothing, I'm going to do it just because he'd be a cool player to team up with Bobby Witt Jr. in these late stages of their career. Bobby Witt Jr. is going for a 4th World Series title, and it looks like Vlad Guerrero Jr. would be going for a 2nd World Series title. I tend to think they're still going to probably want a decent amount for him. They want a useful player for him, and given that we're kind of just doing this for the heck of it, I don't think we need to chase him. If we get them to keep 100% of his salary, they'd still do the trade for certain people, but we're not going to give up Hillman. We're not going to give up Javi Medina. We're not going to give up Jonathan Ojeda, and we're not going to give up Alex Vasquez. So it was a nice thought while it was out there, but I don't see that happen. And we'll still sim through the next few days, just make sure that there's no big new injuries before the end of the trade deadline. But I think it's conceivable that this is the first trade deadline that I can remember with these Kansas City Royals where we're not going to have completed a trade. And we have had one trade offer come our way here on the trade deadline day. The White Sox offering us a corner outfielder, which is the last thing we need, Nelson Chavez, for a young 19-year-old right-handed pitcher. So no interest in doing that, even though it certainly does not look like Cortez Ronquillo has been very effective so far. We'll take one final look at the players available on the trade block. I think it's unlikely we're going to do anything. Guerrero Jr. does look like he's recovered from that concussion, so that's positive. Looking at the pitchers, it looks like kind of the same list out there. I just don't feel like we really need to do anything. We'll check in on the price on Guerrero again. I'm guessing it's still going to be just as much as it was a few days ago. Yeah, it looks like they might even be looking for a little more for him, or they're a little less willing to take players if we have them keep the whole contract. Less players that they're interested in. We just don't really need to do anything. We are 75-36. We're up 17 half games on the Twins in the division. It looks like we're up 8.5 games on the Yankees for the best record in the AL. Looks like we're up 7 games on the Cubs for the best record in baseball. Taking a look at our team statistics. Still have the best offense in the American League, first in runs scored and first, second, or third in just about every offensive category except walks and stolen bases. Our pitching is still not as good as it's been in previous seasons, 5th in runs allowed, but I'm willing to go to war with these guys. This is largely a team that's won back-to-back World Series championships. When we do get into the playoffs, we're going to be going with 12 pitchers rather than 13, so we've got another bat on the bench, so that gives us a little flexibility if somebody gets banged up. I guess maybe we want to upgrade from Bob Williams, but he's put up a 2.60 ERA this year. Matt Thompson, our Rule 5 pick, maybe we want to move on from him. I guess we'll see if there's someone better than him. He's put up a 4.78 ERA over 58 and a third innings pitched. Solid profile, and over the course of his major league career, he's been actually a little bit of a below average pitcher. He's younger than some of these guys that we could trade for, but maybe we can find someone to replace Matt Thompson. I don't want to be delinquent given that we're going for the three-peat, but I just don't love any of these guys that are on the trading block out there. I guess I could spend some time and make an offer for someone who's not on the trade block. Min-Ho Choi is interesting. He's the guy who was with us last year when he came over from Korea, but he had a 4.11 ERA with us, and he's a 4.50 ERA this year with Minnesota. I guess theoretically the profile is better than that of the Rule 5 pitcher we had picked up, and he's been a little more effective than him, so I guess that's a small upgrade if we bring him on board. We could have brought him back if we wanted to pay him $5 million a year. I would assume the cost for him has got to be just about nothing. So they're looking for actually someone decent in return for him. In terms of low potential, Hugo Sandoval doesn't ever look like he's going to be a big-time player, 20-year-old who's still in rookie ball, but he has been effective this year with a 2.10 ERA. I guess let's see if we were to send them the Rule 5 guy Thompson. It's kind of still the same list, it broadly looks like. So I just don't know if I even want to chase for Min-Ho Choi, but I'll spend a little time looking at the rest of the pitchers that are out there and let you know what I decide. And I think I may try to bring on Min-Ho Choi. What I want to do now, I'm willing to give up that minor leaguer for him. But what I want to see is, can I get anything for Matt Thompson in trade if he's going to be the one who loses his spot? Can we get something for the Rule 5 acquisition, even if it's just a couple of random prospects, or does no one have any interest in him? And there's something out there. I don't know if there's going to be anyone that we want to bring on board, because it looks like it's mostly guys with, or almost entirely guys with major league contracts. But if we can get anything for Thompson, that'll make the pain of having to give up that prospect for the other reliever a little less. Not that any of this is going to be franchise changing. And we can't really get too much for Matt Thompson. David Tello, 26-year-old first baseman in the Rangers organization. Good work ethic, not great defensively. Could play corner, outfield, first base, DH. Kind of a replacement level type player. But he does still have 3 option years left, so he gives us some kind of flexibility and a little bit of a return for Thompson. So we are going to go ahead and complete that trade, move on from Thompson, and get at least something for the Rule 5 guy before having to just pass him back for nothing to where we got him. And then we will move on and come up with a deal to bring not Min-Ho Lee, he's a free agent. We want to do a trade. Min-Ho Choi, not Min-Ho Lee. Bring him onto the team. And they're still willing to take Sandoval for him. Again, I just don't think that Sandoval's ever going to develop into a guy that you'd feel real good at being a major league pitcher. Would like to give up less for him. Certainly going to see if they will retain Choi's contract, and they will. So now we're going to try to get them to throw in just a couple other bodies to help us, but at least they're paying his whole salary for this year. You know, the issue again is now that he's going to be on the books potentially for next year at that $5 million kind of number. So we may look to move on from him again this offseason. But I think at this point he is a small upgrade for our pitching staff. And we weren't able to get a player out of the Twins, but we got them to keep Choi's contract and also give us $500,000. So we got a little bit more out of it. We're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Hopefully Choi's second stint with our team will be a little more successful than his first was, although although he wasn't incredible for us last year. He still won a World Series with us, and he's won 3 championships in Korea before he came over here. So we are going to put Choi right onto the secondary roster, put Choi up onto the active roster, and take a look at our pitching rotation now. Choi going to be in long relief along with our buddy Dan Keogh, checking in on him. Still giving up a lot of home runs. 4.73 ERA over 72 1/3 innings pitched and 22 home runs allowed. So, given the number of home runs he gives up, his ERA really isn't that horrible. But you can see he's put up a negative WAR this year, just like he did when he was up at the end of last season. And as much as he was a player who we thought was going to be an important part of our pitching staff, it looks like the movement combined with not throwing all that hard is going to be a severe limiting factor in his success for his career. So maybe this offseason, we can see with Dan Keogh and with Mike McNeil couple of 25-year-old players who were highly regarded, with Keogh being a second-round pick and McNeil having been a first-round pick. Maybe we'll be able to package those two guys together to get something interesting in return in this offseason. But I lied when I said that we weren't going to make any trades. We do end up making one minor deal to bring on Choi, and then one minor deal to trade away the Rule 5 acquisition from last year's draft and get something for him. But in the context of these Kansas City Royals in this playthrough, still a relatively quiet trade deadline for the Royals. And I'm sure you'll believe this after the Player of the Week trophies, but Jorge Lebron, Player of the Month in the International League, 392 average, 5 homers, 18 ribbies. As I mentioned, we've got the glut of corner outfielders and DHs, but I think that when you look at LeBron and what his batting profile looks like, the fact that he's durable, the fact that he's fast, in the fact that he can play a competent left and right, and you could put him in center if you have to. There's no question that barring some type of injury, he's a better player than Mike McNeil. The batting profile for McNeil is close, but not as good as LeBron. LeBron has got better durability. LeBron is faster. Really the only thing where McNeil stands out is he's got a better arm, and he does make potentially fewer errors, but he doesn't have quite as good range. So McNeil, even though he's a 25-year-old who's performed pretty well at the major league level, you can see he's got 24 home runs in about 440 at-bats over parts of 3 seasons, and was a number one pick just 4 years ago. Probably someone will be moving on from this offseason, and we're certainly going to have LeBron on the team in September if he's healthy. And similar to last year, when we do go into the playoffs and we have 12 pitchers and 14 position players, we had LeBron on the team as a potential utility outfielder last year in the playoffs. And I think we'll do the same thing this year. You can see over the course of his major league career, 316 batting average, only 1 homer and 76 at-bats, so the power hasn't translated at the major league level yet. And then last year in the postseason, though, he was 1 for 3 with another home run for us as we won the World Series. So LeBron will be up soon enough, but we don't really need to force it right now because we're up 16.5 games on the Twins at this point. So as we begin August and ultimately head into September in our next episode, the only real objective for these Kansas City Royals is just going to be to obviously hang on to the best record in baseball, which we should be able to do, given that the Cubs are our closest challenger. And it looks like we're up 7 on them. Looks like we're up 7.5 on the Yankees. So that would definitely be a big choke to lose that. So we want to hang on to the best record in baseball, but probably even more important than hanging on to the best record in baseball is going to be to go into the playoffs without any significant injuries. So hopefully we will have Borgman back sometime over the next week or so. And then we'll be hoping that we get Willie Flores back at some point in the playoffs. But if close to 2 months from now, when the regular season is over, if the only significant player on the IL is still Willie Flores, that will be viewed as a victory for these Royals. And we will find out what transpires as far as those last couple months of the season and any injuries that do develop in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.